What's up, everybody? Well, with the release of Candyman, finally, we have 4 films in the Candyman franchise to talk about, so now it's time for a ranking. And this might be one of the easiest rankings I've ever done in my life. No research whatsoever went into making this list, just memories of terrible movies and memories of a couple good movies. So, with that being said, no pussyfooting around, let's just go ahead and talk about the bottom of the barrel of this franchise, and that is, without a doubt, easily Candyman 3 Day of the Dead. This is an absolutely abysmal movie. It's an abysmal sequel. And if I was to compile a list of the 10 worst slasher sequels, of which there are hundreds that could easily fill that list, this would certainly be on that top 10 for me. It has no originality, it has no style. The only small nugget of a positive that I could even say about the movie was that there was a moment where they introduced this Candyman cult that's trying to summon him. That right there could have been a cool concept for a movie, but it's something that's literally just introduced and then quite literally killed off in seconds. Nothing about the main actress or the main character that she is portraying is interesting whatsoever. Even Tony Todd himself looks bored and embarrassed with this movie. You can, honestly, it's hard to find a copy to even watch this damn thing. I had to download a really obscure streaming service just to be able to watch this, and then I canceled it immediately after watching this to do my review last week. So, Candyman 3 Day of the Dead, no point whatsoever in ever watching this movie. Even if I was going to do a Candyman like binge watch or like a little Candyman party, just hanging out watching Candyman movies, I would probably vote to skip this one because there's nothing story-wise and certainly nothing enjoyment-wise that would ever merit spending another 90 minutes with this piece of shit movie. Coming in right above that, which I actually thought was horrible the first time that I watched it until I had Candyman 3 to compare it to, and that is Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. Now, Candyman 2, honestly, is just a bad generic movie, but that's where the negatives stop. It's not a movie that offends the Candyman character or the Candyman fandom. It's not a movie that shits all over everything that the first movie brought. It just does everything that the first movie did in a much more generic and a much less successful way. It tries to retread story beats. It retreads direct lines of dialogue from Candyman himself, so even the great Tony Todd feels like he's kind of going through the motions to a degree because he's already given a better performance that he's given in this movie. And just the whole story of this random blonde woman that looks a lot like Helen Lyle, and that continues on in the third movie as well, trying to summon Candyman so that she can exonerate her brother who is accused of Candyman-style crimes. It's just not a story that really is all that compelling. All they really try to do in this is try to make it a little bit more of a straightforward slasher movie and less of a psychological folklore thriller that I would kind of argue the first movie leans towards. And even just the whole storyline about him being infatuated with this woman, it just kind of, it waters down everything that was powerful about his relationship with Helen in the first movie. A character who is outright just ignored in this film, not even mentioned, if I remember correctly. So, Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. If I rewatched it, it probably would not be as bad as I remember it being, now that I have the comparison of Candyman 3, but it's certainly not a good movie, and it's certainly number 3 on this list. Pretty huge gap between my number 3 and my number 2, and number 2 is going to be the brand new reboot, sequel, requel, whatever you want to call it, Candyman. Now, this is a movie that I've been highly anticipating for a couple of years now with all of the delays. Finally got a chance to check it out. I have a full review out that I dropped yesterday. And it's a movie that I really did enjoy. Did disappoint me slightly, which I'll get into reasons why, but overall, it's a movie that I felt understood Candyman, which is more than I could say for the other 2 sequels. It's a movie that knows what was great about the original movie. It's a movie that embraces that, and it's a movie that tries its best to kind of build and expand that and take it in some new directions while very much keeping its feet planted in what all of us Candyman fans loved about that original movie. And that's just a great thing to say about a sequel, especially a slasher sequel, because most of them don't bother with that. It's just, okay, blood, tits, gore, go. Candyman is a powerfully directed movie. It's got a lot of great visuals, and I love the way that they really strategically show the kills and the gore that this movie has. It's not just an in-your-face splatterfest, which might disappoint some people, but for me, I thought that the way that they utilized the whole visual medium of the mirrors to really show the carnage and not show the carnage was really cool and creative. It's a very pretty movie to look at. It's just beautifully shot. I thought all of the characters in it were all pretty well done, with the exception of the main character. There's about 15 minutes at least that feels like it's missing from this movie, which is my overall disappointment with it, because the first two acts are so deliberately paced that the third act feels like it's rushing, and it feels like it's fast forwarding to the final couple shots that they're trying to make, which unfortunately are shots that's trying to really put the nail on the head with this whole social message that they're going through with this movie. And that's not something you want to fast forward or skip or cheat with, because it feels like you're preaching and not getting your whole message out whenever you're trying to get from point A to point Z that quickly. And that character, the main character of Anthony, is kind of at the center of that, to where it feels like the movie doesn't do enough to justify his placement in the story as far as his ties to the original film. It doesn't do enough to really hammer home this whole message about police brutality and the oppression of the black community in regards to where they're trying to place his character by the third act and by the end of the film. It was heading in a direction. It just feels like there's something missing, because the entire movie feels so tight and deliberate and artistically strong that it just feels foreign to the movie to get to that third act and all of a sudden feel like things are just being shoved into place. There's square pegs being shoved into round holes. So I enjoyed the sequel. Definitely the best Candyman sequel out there. Could have been a little bit better. Which leaves the original classic as number one, as I figured it probably would be. As high as my expectations were for this new Candyman, I had no doubt whatsoever that I was probably still going to love the original more. And I was very late to the party with Candyman. I didn't become a Candyman fan until about 2-3 years ago. It's a movie that I just completely missed. I think the reputation of the sequels overshadowed the very underrated awesomeness of this original film. And what I love about the original Candyman is that it's much more than just a slasher. When people say this is just a 90s slasher, it almost feels like it's devaluing the film, because this is much more of a folklore horror. This is much more talking about urban legends and the effect that stories have on communities over time and on the people of those communities. And Candyman, while visually is very much a slasher horror icon in and of himself, it feels like the character is a piece of that storyline, and he's a cog in the wheel of this storyline that Helen Lyle is uncovering throughout the movie. He's not just there to be the face of the horror. He's not just there to be this titular killer that's out here to slash people to death in Cabrini Green. It's much deeper than that. So the film is very, very underrated in my opinion. I think a lot of people now with this new film will go back and discover it, which is awesome. Virginia Madsen as the lead is great. She's one of my favorite quote-unquote final girls. Her character is great. Her relationship with Candyman is great. The way that everything wraps up with her becoming kind of the new urban legend by the end is awesome. It's a great movie. It's a great 90s horror flick that I'm glad a lot more people are going to be checking out, because it is number one. So what do you guys think of the Candyman franchise? Put your ranking down below. Let me know how you feel. Do you love this new one as number one? Did you hate it worse than some of the generic 90s sequels? Or are you not a fan of any of them and you're just going to have a crazy ranking going on? Let me know all of your thoughts down below and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button so that you cannot miss anything coming out here soon. Getting ready to get into the Hellraiser franchise as well as the Exorcist franchise here very soon. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any of that. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.